Hey everyone, my name is Charlie and today is the beginning of another reading vlog. We have codged together a tripod setting and a lamp. I am going to have to do a lot of moving around again before we start the day here at the charity shop, but it's Monday. I have been awake since 5:30 due to the fact that I had to get a lift in to work from my father, which is going to be the way for at least this week. Next week and the following week I am actually on holiday, so don't have to worry about getting here. The only worry that I've currently got is the same worry I've had since the car broke, and that is about taking Sal out on a walk. That's because apart from Friday when my dad gave me a lift to the towpath so I could do this nice hour-long walk, I've really only been able to walk through the park because Sally doesn't like going along the main road. She did well on Friday coming back from the towpath, but that's simply because that road is not as busy as the main road to the towpath. We'll see. Apparently it's due to be wet this week and she doesn't like walking out in the rain anyway. It's just really getting to me as well, because I found as I've got older, one way to alleviate feelings of stress and anxiety is to go for these nice lengthy walks, and having no car means I can't go out to the countryside or the forest where I like to do my nice lengthy walks, and honestly it's just too loud in a built up area for me to get any sense of calm. We're starting the week still at the same place we were with the last Chronicle of Barset, which is at page 150, and that is simply because I got into doing a jigsaw. It was the Charles Dickens jigsaw. I had planned to do this whilst listening to a Charles Dickens book. That did not happen. I was going to take the jigsaws away with me when I went on holiday next week, but I'm worried about the accommodation. I'll say this again. Basically, I didn't look, and the place where we're actually staying has a very small living area as opposed to the rooms, which seem to be huge. There's actually a settee in the kitchen because of how small this place is. I feel like we're just in somebody's flaming washroom. Like, this is where you would make the servants take off their wellies before they entered in. It's just how I feel. And I say this because my brother used to live in a rather large farmhouse, and they had a building just like this where they had to take off their wellies and dirty clothes. So because there's no table in this hellhole we'll be staying in, honestly it's all my mother's fault. She stood over me and made me pay for it. If we just waited we could have stayed where I wanted to for much cheaper, but we won't get into that. So I'll be there next week and won't be able to do these jigsaws, so I did this jigsaw now, and I found it incredibly annoying. It was irksome, it was difficult. I was so glad when my sister came around yesterday because she set to it with her fiance and they helped to get it done, because I was fed up of looking at it. A jigsaw for me, it's a nice thing to do, but I also like it to be done because I can't focus on anything else till it's finished, like puzzles or stuff like that. So yeah, the plan this week is to read the last Chronicle of Barset. I can't find the book that I was sent to review, so that's not good. And I know one book that I'm taking away with me to Whitby next week, but I really need to make a decision as to what I take. Will I take purely Victober books because I tried that last year and didn't read anything? Or do I just take this one book that I am buddy reading with Katie and just do that? Because I take books away with the intention of reading them, but I read all the time anyway. But I'm not reading at the moment. It's a really weird situation to be in right now. I don't know what I want. I'm going to think more about it over the week and figure out what I want to take with me. This week, last Chronicle of Barset, maybe some more Victorian literature, maybe nothing at all. We will see. But for now, coffee. It's Wednesday. On Monday, Just after I'd spoken to you, I received a phone call from the scrap company to say as they could come and collect my car, and so that all happened at 12 o'clock. They said they'd come between 12 and 3. They arrived at 12 o'clock on the nose. He parked his van across the road, and I showed him the car park where my car was. And then it was like sod's law opened up. I don't know which deity I offended during the autumn equinox, but I definitely did something to offend some sort of creation in a spiritual realm somewhere. Because he starts taking his van to go down the lane to the car park, and there is a hearse blocking the way. As that happens, 2 wagons come and block the entire road. So there's absolutely no way that he's able to move his van anywhere to get my car on the back of it. This goes on for about 10 minutes. The entire scenario, I mean, was all done within 15 minutes. But for those minutes, I'm like, what am I going to do? Because we've now got this hearse here, nothing can move in front of the car park. And then somebody who works upstairs needed to move their vehicle. They needed to go off to an appointment somewhere, and they could not do that. Either way, my car, I don't know how he did it, but he managed to drive onto the back of his van. And I'll admit, in this moment, at first, somebody asked me, how are you feeling? And I was like, I'm fine. You know, I wanted the car gone because I didn't want the landlord saying anything about this car being sat there for a week. And then as I saw them put it on the back of this wagon and just write on tow on it and put these lights on it, and I got this certificate of destruction, I did feel bad for my car. I think that it's because we humanise things, don't we? And this was my first ever car. I learnt to drive for a bit in this. I've got a few stories surrounding this car, and you know, it's the only car that my dog has known as well. And I keep saying to her when I'm looking at her and that I'm sorry, we can't go, we don't have a car, and I don't think she understands that. But yesterday my dad did give me a lift to the towpath so that I could walk her, and it poured down with rain the entire time, so she wasn't happy, but I was also determined that we were going to walk for at least an hour. As it stands, I should have just kept on until I got to the entrance where my dad dropped me off last week, because he arrived home soon after I did, and if I'd walked the entire way, then I probably would have met him at the entrance, could have got in the Land Rover and come home, rather than have Sal walk down these main roads again. I wasn't to know that he would have been there. Had it not been raining, then he would have been at the field for a longer time than he was. So, you know, ifs and buts, candy and nuts, that sort of thing. However, it's still raining today, and my dad isn't well, so I'm unable to get a lift anywhere. And Sally, I've tried walking her to the towpath from my house, and she gets to the road, and as soon as she gets to that road, she seizes up. She's not moving, it's not happening. So that's where we are today. As it is raining, we probably aren't going to get a walk in. And so I have spent the majority of today reading Moonfleet by Meade Falkner. This book came into the charity shop a few weeks ago, and I was certain that I'd heard about it, so I went to YouTube and found that Kate Howe read this for Victober last year and seems to particularly enjoy it. I have to say, I understand that completely. I am 143 pages in, and this is a book that doesn't let up. It is an adventure story. This book was originally published in 1898, but the Scholastic edition was released in 2015, and they actually have quite a few Victorian classics or just classics of children's literature in this range, because it's about getting younger people to read classic fiction. And what I like about these editions is that the font is quite big, and it feels like it was made to be read. You know, like some books and some classic editions, they have font that is so small that it feels impenetrable and almost makes you steer clear of them. On the back, it says, John Trenchard has fallen in with a band of smugglers and is determined to find Blackbeard's diamond, but is it true that the gem is cursed? I don't know that we've got there yet, but what I've really enjoyed about this is that it's set in a coastal town, and every chapter is filled with intrigue. There is also a heart to the story, and you get the sense that John is displaced without having his parents there, and he's being raised by this auntie that doesn't really like him. Quite early on in the novel, we are introduced to Elzevir Block, who is the local innkeeper. His son was recently killed, and he has a vendetta against another man, and this has caused quite a few moments of upset and intrigue within the novel so far. For me, I'm surprised at the pace of this book. I haven't read many books in this genre from this period, and I'm wondering if the others in this genre are like this. I was never one for those swashbuckling adventures involving pirates. I love an adventure story, but they're usually a magical adventure story. I never got into pirates, but this hasn't really been about piracy. It's been about men bringing prohibited substances to the land, and everything is kicked off from there. As well as being set in this coastal town, another aspect that I've liked about this book is the folklore and the myths and the legends and the way that this child's life is made up of them. He hasn't recognised that they are legends yet. He hasn't recognised that they are just stories, and I like that. And it gives this magical aspect, this almost supernatural aspect to the tale that probably isn't there, but I know from experience that when you're younger, your mind is somewhat more prone to accepting ideas of the supernatural. I like the way that sometimes John ends up having fears of things that aren't there. He very much, to me, feels like a child. There is things that we are not aware of as the reader because it is being told from the child's perspective, but as an adult, you're able to gauge what's going on. I'm really enjoying this, and I often say that one way that I can sometimes recognise when I'm really enjoying a book is if I'm finding it inspiring me to write. I'm looking at the way that Falkner has written the book to inform my own writing in future, and yeah, I wanted to come to this because it was shorter, and I'm feeling that whole thing of not having finished anything yet in the month, so I decided to move to a few shorter books. And originally I got plans to take this away with me next week, but given the book that I'm already going to be taking with me, I decided that I would just stick with this one. And I'm glad that I did, because it was raining, and sometimes when it's raining, when it's like this and an autumnal day, I like to read one book in one go. It's just who I am. I like the sense of completion and the entire feeling of that during the day, so Moonfleet had to be read today. I am still reading the last Chronicle of Barset though. However, I am only 200 pages in. I had hoped to have read more of this by now, but that's always the way. I think that I can read more than I can. Because I don't have a car, a lot of the time that I plan to read has been taken over by looking for a vehicle. That hasn't happened yet. I haven't found anything that hasn't got huge issues or is outside of my price range. I know that there is a car. I like every aspect of it, but I think it's too big of a car for me. So I'm looking for others, and the alternatives aren't much better. So right now, still carless, but I think it's something that I'll think about when I return from holiday. I'm supposed to be away next week. I'm hoping that this still happens. My mother was always going to be driving us there anyway, but it's a fingers crossed sort of scenario because, as I say, my dad's ill and that sort of thing. So for now, I'm going to go. I'm going to continue reading Moonfleet, and I hope that my dog isn't too upset that she's not going out today. It's Friday, it's 20 to 8, and I am already in work because I had to get a lift off my mother today, and she starts work at 8 o'clock. I don't start work until 9 o'clock, so I brought my breakfast with me, and I'm gonna go and have a cup of tea. You're also currently on the bookcases, and I'm looking around at these bookcases and noticing, again, a few books that other people have put in, a bit of a mess, a shambles, which I am going to look forward to fixing today. What has happened since last we spoke? I haven't yet finished Moonfleet like I'd hoped to, but I have brought it to work with me to get that last bit done. I really enjoy this story. I like the twists it takes, the adventure and the sense of adventure behind it. Weirdly, I wouldn't say that as a child I'd have enjoyed this book, because as I said earlier in the video, I never really much went in for the swashbuckling type of books. The books that were to do with piracy and treasure and that sort of thing did not appeal to me as many times as I owned Treasure Island or Robinson Crusoe, although that was something entirely different, I admit that. Or Kidnapped, that was the other one. They never appealed to me as much as magical books did, and magic still has that hold on me when it comes to middle grade fiction or the time of year for fantasy, whereas I do like an adventure tale, and it's the adventure part of this that's doing it for me. My apologies, my vision, if I keep looking off in different places, I'm just seeing what people have put out on the shelves. I probably should have looked at that beforehand. I've just realised that somebody moved the entirety of my M's and put them where the N's were, and that's frustrating to me. I become very possessive of the books in this shop. It's a bad thing to do. I shouldn't be like this. We had the writers group yesterday. We had a talk from somebody about self-publishing, and part of me did worry that I'd overtaken the workshop and the talk that they were giving, but I did have some legitimate questions about things that were being said. I've just realised with these M's as well, they've not even gone in alphabetical order for M's. They've just taken a load of M's out the back and shoved them down there. This is frustrating to me. I will have to fix that. And then afterwards I was speaking to Joy, because I didn't see her last week. She had been at the Cheltenham Festival, and we didn't talk about writing much. There was a lot more to catch up on, but I did mention how I want to get this book planned. Not necessarily written. I've done a lot in the past where I have planned a book and then not written it for a while. Dane got back to me with the first round of edits for Mistakes, Me and Murder, and I believe he's at the 40% mark, so send him a bit more money, get the rest of it done, and then I can go and make some changes. There is a few more changes to make surrounding the timeline. I think, again, we need more clarity. That's one of the things with the editing this time. It's all about the clarity of the thing, and I think my problem is exactly what I said to you throughout the writing of this book. I made the mistake of separating this into chapters. If I just wrote this sequentially as one block of text like I have done with all of my other books, then everything would have been right, but I didn't do that, and so there are a lot more issues than there would have been otherwise, and it frustrates me because I hate editing. So I hate this part of the writing process. So anytime I get more messages about what changes need to be made, I get so annoyed because I don't want to do it. I don't like it. Anyway, I'm tired. I'm gonna go and have some breakfast, and I'll speak to you all tomorrow to round this video off. I am going to try and get this done quickly before anybody arrives. It's Saturday, and I am just here to round off this video. I finished reading Moonfleet by Meade Falkner. While I enjoyed the majority of this book, the final 3 chapters went in a direction that I felt marred the story for me, and I keep thinking over how it could have been done better, or if I were to direct an adaptation of this for the television, exactly what I would do so that we didn't have a strange time skip. It wasn't really necessary, it didn't advance the plot, the character was still exactly the same, and I have found this sometimes with Victorian novels, which I struggle to get my head around, is the amount of time they're meant to have covered. And for me, just covering 10 years by saying 10 years passed and I never saw this person, it didn't work for me, and specific things within those final 3 chapters just felt a bit muddy and a bit rushed. I think as a young man, not me, but back in the day, I can see why they might have liked it and how it might have appealed to them in some way. But for me now, and even me when I'd been younger, if I'd read this, I wouldn't have cared for it. So it's a shame. I still think that it's a good Victorian adventure story. It was incredibly fast paced, and that was one of the things I liked, but I kept checking that it hadn't been edited because it had such a fast paced modern tone to it that I was utterly surprised by. But it's not become a firm favourite of mine. However, I do think that it would be a great book for people who are trying to get into Victorian literature, because it serves as a great link up, because whilst there are moments within there that are written in a bit of a grandiloquent Victorian prose style, and there's still some telling over showing, it's not so bad that you would find it impenetrable, and I think that it's a great gateway into reading more classic Victorian literature. Maybe this is a book that we should be showing to younger readers to try and get them interested in this era of literature, and it might lead to them reading more from this era. I didn't read any more of the last Chronicle of Barset this week, and part of me is like, should I see how much I can get read on a Sunday and before I go away so that I don't have to take the book away with me? I don't know. I also keep thinking about planning the middle grade novel, but I'm now doing further research, and I think if you remember back in June I was researching then, but this feels more intense because I don't have anything else to do whilst I wait for Dane to get back to me with edits for Mistakes Mean Murder. My mother's about to come back with coffee and my manager will be here soon, so I am going to call things a day there. If you've read Moonfleet and would like to discuss it, indeed if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned in this video, then please feel free to discuss them in the comments. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.